Hi, I'm Arthur, and this is part 18 in a 20-part series I am doing covering successor chapters in order of the legions with interesting backgrounds or descriptors or just fan favorite shit that people really like. And you definitely don't need to have seen the other parts to understand this one, but it would make me happy if you did. I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. I legit just couldn't think of a topic to talk about in regards to the Salamander's successors. I guess I could just talk about the most random chapters they have, like the Dragon Warriors or some shit, but I think it would be just cooler to talk about something in the spirit of the Salamanders rather than force myself to talk about something that's uninteresting. So, you like flamers, kids? Yeah, I bet you do. It's almost a universal constant that two laws apply. One, flamethrowers are always cool, and two, flamethrowers in video games are always ass. So, thankfully, I'm going to just be talking about them in the context of 40k lore, because I legit think the flamethrowers of this setting are some of the coolest representations of it in media. Now, is that a very specific set of criteria for me to base upon? You know, coolest flamethrower in fictitious media? Yeah. I kind of want to figure out what the best torrent-based flame weapon in this game is. With very little limitations, I am excluding chemical throwers, though some acid spewers I will keep in because they basically are functionally the same thing, but acid spit doesn't really fit that criteria just because it burns and has a short range. And the reason why I'm putting in some acid spewers is because I'm biased towards that one scene from Starship Troopers where that guy gets his ass melted by the weird butt mortar bugs that shot it out, and I wanted to put Tyranids on the list, so there is that. But let's try to lay down some ground rules here. 1. Flamethrowers, or flamers, are a short-range chemical projection device that sprays liquid fuel of some sort towards an enemy. The fuel is ignited by a pilot light or some kind of other flame, and then coats an enemy. These are usually used to scare people, remove people from cover, or just make an area that is hostile for people to stand in so that you can clear ground a little easier. 2. The most common fuel in the setting is promethium, and it can get a little bit confusing if I don't specify what promethium is, because promethium is actually a generic term. The generic term, like how we use gas for things like petrol, diesel, and I don't know, anything that involves locomotion. We just call it gas, even though it's different shit per thing. So it can be a bit confusing, but in general, in the context of flamers, promethium is essentially just referring to napalm. So yeah. And lastly, I'm going in order of 3 different chunks: the Imperium, the Chaos, and the Aliens, covering the majority of the flamers therein. Also, lastly, no one-offs. So unfortunately, stuff like the Hellfire Extremists that Watch Captain Artemis uses can't be discussed. Only the most generic stuff you see on the battlefield. Okay, cool. Okay, let's hop in, but before we do that, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. Best in show, best in price, and damn near most eye-catching designs on the market, GamerSupps is back again on this channel to allow me to promote They Juice, which I do love, They Juice. I make it no secret I was a customer of theirs long before I ended up picking up this deal with them, because a good energy drink replacement was something I was always on the hunt for, as the cans were stacking up higher and higher and my wallet was looking thinner and thinner. So I ordered a couple tubs, and look where that got me. Sling of juice like some half-shattered Kool-Aid man. With deals, sales, promotions, and new stuff coming out all the time, you'll always have something new to engage with on the GamerSupps page. If you click my link in the description and use code BONEZONE at checkout, you get 10% off your order, as most of you already are aware. So when using my little gift to you, you should pick up some cherry lime sticker. Holy shit! That is... Okay, there's a lot more going on that label than just cherry lime, but you know what? Godspeed. Grab yourself some of that, and maybe a shaker cup. All pretty well designed, if I do say so myself, as someone who has quite a few at this point. Let me know in the comments what you pick up, and special thanks to GamerSupps for sponsoring this channel. Alright, let's get Space Marines out of the way. I'm not gonna hit all of them, just the most notable ones. Like, starting off, the Humble Astartes Flamer is just an enhanced version of the standard Flamer. Large replaceable canister at the base, enhanced distance from the standard, large replaceable canister at the base where a magazine would go on a normal gun, and usually the guy holding it is a lot scarier than the weapon itself, which would tell you something. It is a flamethrower that you have seen likely 100 if not 1,000 times on the tabletop, usually on assault squads, and usually really fucking useful. The humble Space Marine flamer has been the cure to whatever ails you the enemy has for about 40 years now, and if whatever ails you is the sin of your enemies, congrats, you're now able to turn them into an inert pile of regretful ash on the ground, which, you know, leads to less sin in the area, I guess. Coming in a smaller variant known as a hand flamer, you could probably guess what it does. It's basically just the same thing as a regular flamer, but with the components brought down to a smaller level. The range is shorter, the distance in which the flames can spread is shorter, and the canister is only good for about 2 or 3 spurts before it's done. It's a good side weapon if you want to scare the living shit out of people in a melee, but other than that, it's usually just better to carry a regular flamer. Next is the Big Mammoth Jamma, the heavy flamer. It is simply put everything in a flamer, but better. 2 barrels to jet out more promethium, as well as wider barrels to really open up the options for war crimes here. This usually requires an extended access to fuel, so for most of the Imperium, they use these as vehicle-mounted weapons so that the fuel canisters can be held inside an armored chassis, but for Space Marines who are able to put up a little bit more defense and plan out their assault a little more, the Devastators tend to have them on their backs, and Terminators, which are incredibly armored, tend to have specialized canisters mounted on the sides of the weapons themselves, although containing less fuel as a byproduct. It can reach temperatures of up to 900 degrees Celsius, which no, I'm not converting into freedom units. I just know it better in Celsius, so good for you. Before we clear out the regular Space Marine junk, I just want to shout out an offshoot, the Pyre Blaster. Basically the Primaris flamer that came out, I think, at the start of 10th edition. Started with the Black Templars Primaris Crusader squads, but then eventually found a little bit later in the Infernus squads more commonly. The main difference is accuracy and range. It's basically firing fuel through a more concentrated hose, so there's less of a dispersed gout of flame and more of a lengthier, thinner stream that lights things on fire from a distance. It was used to clear out forests and burn away Tyranid bioforms so they couldn't be recycled. There's a heavy version, you know, the heavy Pyre Blaster. You could probably already guess what that one is if you listened to the last 5 minutes of this audio. Speaking of the heavy version, now we have the biggest and the baddest version of the flamer for pretty much all of the Imperium outside of stuff that's mounted on like Titans. The Flamestorm Cannon. See, where the heavy flamer could be mounted on a vehicle but used by Space Marines, the Flamestorm Cannon is so powerful that it needs to be mounted on Space Marine vehicles, most commonly mounted on Land Raiders because of the amount of energy and just resources it needs to eat up in order to be used properly. Also, shout out to the Ball Predator, who is a smaller tank that can have one of these things mounted on its side. Basically, a Flamestorm Cannon is like if you duct taped 3 heavy flamers together. It has more range, more heat, and uses so much fuel that you'd think you were watching that one scene from Terminator 2 with Sarah Connor on the playground fence if you were watching someone get hit by it. It is an awesome weapon, though is very rare due to, well, if the fuel tanks that hold its fuel get ruptured or nicked in the slightest, it usually explodes into a small mushroom cloud and kills the entire crew, which is kind of shitty because, you know, Space Marines and whatever, but also they're incredibly expensive and rare to make just because of the materials required. So let's cover the rest of the Imperium now, shall we? So the Imperial Guard has more or less the same level of tech that the Space Marines have, just lesser, with flamers that are smaller, heavy flamers that are roughly the same size, though are usually used with heavy weapon teams, or they're mounted on vehicles, and even some ranking members of the Imperial Guard are able to carry around hand flamers, which is, I don't know, seems like a bit of a tricky surprise to throw at an orc who thought he was going to get into a fair fight, but I shall note that there are a few interesting additions, like the Inferno Cannon and the Heavy Inferno Cannon. These weapons are actually so deadly and so horrible that they can only be equipped on vehicles, though also Inferno Cannons can be outfitted on dreadnoughts from time to time for Space Marines. The cannons in question fire with a specialized flame projector that instead of sustained bursts that fire from like a pump action, it's more they get rocketed out violently through a pneumatic tube, firing a massive powerful burst of flame and napalm in a short direction. It's slower than a bullet, but faster than a flamethrower. Basically, it trades sustained fire for a massive cloud of flame directly flying towards a specific location. With that being stated, its range is now a rather staggering 150 yards, which is a big fucking yikes, but fun fact, this weapon is also used by titans. Funner fact, it's stated that to use this weapon, you basically need to be a pyromaniac who has a weird obsession with burning people to death. Though, it also filters out people through training, due to part of the training requiring you to learn how to be a bit more discreet with the weapon, because if you fire it while moving the vehicle, it will actually melt the front half of the vehicle due to the backdraft of the flames that get caught a little bit in the wind, and the heat still lagging behind it, which has led to a fair number of deaths. I will now touch upon the Sisters of Battle only briefly, as they don't have much different in terms of flamers as much as they just have an obsession with flamers. Yeah, they really like burning people to death. It's kind of their thing, with a bunch of different units specialized in flamer usages, but the thing is they tend to just use the standard Astartes war gear, just slightly scaled down. Not nearly as scaled down as the Imperial Guard, but you catch what I mean. So they have flamers, heavy flamers, and the thing that I wanted to bring up that was specific to them is the Immolator tank, which, with a name like that, you could probably imagine what it does, but it's pretty damn fun. It is a specialized rhino chassis flamer tank that is fixated on one thing and one thing only, burning, except for those few times in the past where you could equip it with heavy bolters as well as multi-meltas. It has 2 twin-linked heavy flamers on each side, which basically means 4 heavy flamers, 2 to a side. Though this isn't really much different from something like a bunch of Space Marines with heavy flamers. The Immolator does it with a lot more pizzazz. Sauce is important, don't you know? Okay, lads. Let's do the lightning round, because basically we're going to be discussing a bunch of one-offs that are kind of just the only flamer unit in an entire faction for the Imperium, or we're going to be grouping ones together that really don't have much lore, so there isn't much to discuss. So, which Seeker Flamer? Basically the same thing as a regular flamer, but Psychers hate it just a little bit more, used by the Sisters of Silence, and probably just uses the blessed promethium fuel that they talk about every now and then. Infernus Firepike, basically just a slightly longer ranged heavy flamer, used by an older pattern of Terminator the Custodes have. There is literally no lore about it other than it exists, and it has tabletop representation. The Mechanicus? Weird. Literally all their flamers are under the category of, I guess it just exists. The Incendine Combustor, God, that's weirdly hard to say. The Incendine Combustor is a holy artifact flamer that is ultra blessed by Martian priests and is outfitted to Castellan robots, so it's basically just a super heavy flamer. The Phosphor Torches are used by flying dudes who like burning shit to death, and that's all we know about how they work. And the Cerberus Sulfur Hounds are cybernetically enhanced super horses fed on a diet of flammable food that allows them to breathe fire that is then further augmented by weird flame nozzles attached to their mouth. What? That actually just sounds fake. It's not? Okay. The last flamer I wanted to cover before moving on to Chaos is the Incinerator, which is literally just a heavy flamer, but the Promethium they use is triple blessed, like maybe quadruple blessed sometimes. Like so blessed it actually hurts demons made of fire by covering them in different fire, which is cool. It's used by Grey Knights and members of the Ordo Malleus, so there is that. Functionally the same thing, just creates psi flames instead of regular fire, which is also just regular fire, but psi, I guess. Okay, Chaos Flamies, let's go. Chaos is one of those categories of lore where, in general, the mortals of Chaos have access to about 90% of the same shit the Imperium has, with a little bit of ooky spooky hocus pocus added on top. We shall get to the hocus pocus, but for the majority of Chaos, just assume Space Marines are, like, equipped with both flamers, heavy flamers, and hand flamers, alongside the standard weird shit. So, with the basics out of the way, let's cover the weird shit, starting with the Balefire weapons. Balefire is kind of weird. It's like typically 70% technology and 30% magic. This magic is used to produce essentially limitless fuel for the flamer's fire. So balefire projectors are usually demonic in origin, but usually used on demon machines rather than just 100% demons. And the flames are basically just more concentrated and rather powerful in comparison to the normal size. It's complicated, but we don't know much other than the fact that they're fire that's also really, really hot. For example, the most common one you're probably going to recognize is simply put the Bale Flamer of the lovable and lavish Helldrake. The Helldrake is literally just a dragon. It looks like a pterodactyl, but it also breathes fire. It's this kind of anti-flying vehicle monstrosity that is really, really good at taking down jets and planes because it can A, fly incredibly fast, and B, well, it has the maneuverability of a bird, so it has that fun thing that jets don't have, which is they can stop midair and then redirect itself however it sees fit. It's pretty dangerous, and also it has flying melee weapons, so there's that. But the thing is the Bale Flamer that is built into its mouth, though it can also be replaced with a rotary autocannon. But yeah, it breathes fire, and it's Bale Flame, whichever the difference that is between regular fire. I believe Hellstalkers can have them too, which is a mount so obscure that I think they only gave one miniature that, and it was the Lord Discordant, which the Lord Discordant can only come on a Hellstalker, which is weird to make that distinction. There is a bunch of weird shit that you could talk about with the Bale Flamers, but there's only one other weapon that I think is included in this category, and that is the Balefire Pike. I literally think it's only usable by mortals, and that's the only thing we need to know about it, because I could not find damn near anything about this weapon. It's on one miniature, and that's the Cultist Firebrand. It's a cool looking weapon. It's just a very long flamer, but I'm assuming it's also just a Bale Flamer, which, I don't know, man. The last category of weapons in the Chaos Mortal side of Chaos is the inversion of the Bale Flamer, where it's 70% weird magical bullshit and 30% technology, which is kind of cool. The Warp Flamer is a weapon that is used exclusively by the Thousand Sons in the modern day, and it is basically just pure Tzeentchian bullshit. Essentially, it spews out a bunch of mixed up Tzeentch fire. So, what is Tzeentch fire? Well, it's complicated. Some of it burns, some of it freezes, some of it actually causes mutations, but most of it just does random bullshit whenever it hits you. But the Warp Flamers are kind of just more focused on burning you to death and usually charring your soul. So in a gout of blue and sometimes pink flame, it'll basically encapsulate you, melt through your armor, and then kill you pretty much instantly. It's less complicated than regular Tzeentchian flame. It comes in a hand flamer version and a heavy flamer version, and you could probably guess what they do in comparison to the rest of the versions that are held by a singular marine. It's just a small version for your hand and a large version for when you want to melt the side of a tank. So let's switch over to demons now. And I have to be at least a little bit disappointed here, as, well, most of the Chaos Gods don't really have flamethrowers, which you could probably guess already which one has them, and has them in abundance, I mind you, but I was legit surprised to find out that Khorne didn't really have any contemporary version outside of, like, maybe one guy that screams really loud, and it's also kind of hot. I guess the more you think about it, the more you realize that Khorne doesn't really get any blood from a charred corpse, so there is that. Khorne tends to use flaming weapons rather than, you know, flamethrowers, you know, the burning swords, the burning axes, and I guess the skull cannon, which is pretty fun, to be honest. So let's talk about the Flames of Tzeentch and why they are hilarious. Usually being spouted out by the Flamers of Tzeentch. The Flames of Tzeentch usually come in two colors, pink and blue. Is there a difference? Not really that I could find. I mean, on the tabletop, the blue Flames of Tzeentch are used as more of an anti-tank weapon, while the pink Flames of Tzeentch are used as an anti-infantry, but literally in lore there is almost no distinction made from what I could find. Flamers of Tzeentch and Exalted Flamers tend to spew these things out, and the funniest part is it's actually considered unstable wild magic. If you are hit by them, literally anything, and I mean anything, can happen. It's listed several possible ideas of what could happen. Like, what if it just suddenly destroys all inorganic material on you, so all metals and your fake leather jacket just disappears and you're naked and more or less unscathed. Sometimes you can be showered in a whole blast of grape juice rather than just being covered in fire, and then sometimes you just turn into an inert pile of ash on the ground. It's kind of a crapshoot, and the funniest part is that flamers usually tend to travel in packs, so you're never getting hit with just one of these effects, which, again, you're rolling the dice, but you're usually getting blasted with 5 different status effects, each doing their own things all at the same time, and for the most part, they end up kind of fucking you up, especially if you get any of the mutation-based effects, because you're not going to come out looking fun. You have Exalted Flamers, too, who are flamers that have, for some reason, achieved a level of sapience to them, and they're able to make their own decisions, as well as lead small war bands. They can blast you with multiple gouts of flame at will, which which usually means they are up close and pretty horrible to deal with at the same time. I love the idea of spinning the fucking wheel of random probability whenever you get blasted with the pastel goth fire stream. It's really damn funny, but that leads me into a weird spot where I want to bring up something no one really ever mentions. A lot of Tzeentch stuff is based around corrupted wizard archetypes. We already kind of know this, it just kind of comes with the brand, which is cool. I like evil wizards. Sounds fun. The weirdest part is flamers are just evil wizard robes, and no one ever brings that up. They literally hop and fly around like they are animated robes. It's even mentioned in lore that they look kind of goofy. They shoot fire out of the hand stumps, where the little weird beardy man would have his hands poking out to shoot their own magic spells, and the top where the head is supposed to be just looks like the opening of a robe or a hood. It's so weird, and I've never seen anyone bring it up. I just wanted to bitch about this for a second because I feel like it's such a funny little trivia tidbit. I don't know if it was intentional, but if you look at the original Flamer of Tzeentch, like the model from first edition, you can kind of see it, right? Lastly, I wanted to shout out sort of something that's not really a flamer. I just really like it. It's the soul burner. Soul burners were something I used in 8th edition with some Forge World stuff I used in tournaments, and they were just really fun. They were used on Chaos Decimators, which is also a really fun model. They were the inverse of a regular flamer, where in the normal game you didn't have to roll to hit with flamers, you just went to wound because, I mean, it's a wall of fire. If you're within range, you do hit. But with the soul burners, it actually was the opposite. All you had to do was hit them, and no matter how tough they were, it would always wound. It just skipped the wound process. It was really cute. But they were basically just long-range ballistic projectile weapons that exploded into fire when they landed. Not exactly a flamethrower, but it sounded pretty cool, so I just wanted to bring it up, I guess. I don't know, man. Let's cover the Xenos flamers now, and then crown a winner, shall we? The last category I want to discuss is likely the most out of nowhere one, because with Chaos there is a degree of sameness that comes with every single flamethrower they have. As you could guess, most of the Chaos stuff is stolen from Imperial tech, and modifying it with a little bit of magical bullshit from now and then. So with all that in mind, I kind of want to talk about the aliens, and the aliens themselves kind of you follow a similar universal constant, and that is the phrase fire bad, as fire is in fact very bad. It is quite literally the baddest it could be. With all that being said, the mechanisms at which most flamers function across alien kind is pretty similar, but also pretty different depending on the one you get to, although following the basic idea of shooting a small cloud of fire. I am going to be stretching the definition of flamer a little bit for some of these, but I think it'd be kind of funny just to include some stuff that isn't truly a flamer, but it does fit the bill pretty much to a T. So yeah, let's get into it. Starting with the orcs, because I think when people think about aliens that like flame weapons, the orcs usually come to mind pretty quickly, and for good reason. Orcs are simple creatures with simple motives and goals. They desire fire most days, and desire the ability to burn the living shit out of everything they damn well see. They like killing, cooking, shooting, and fighting. Simple as. Can kind of relate to them on that sort of field. So the simplest way to see the orcs is their flamers are incredibly simplified versions of what a flamethrower could be. Usually just a fuel tank with a tube and a fire at the end of it to light the fuel that comes out. Literally just that. But in general, the orcs do have some weird additions to it. See, the fuel they use, while also being promethium, is actually different. See, the leader of any burna group is a mech, and the mech of that burna group tends to mix gasoline, you know, the promethium, with squig oil and a bunch of other random shit that they find. This is called the burna brew, and they end up using that instead of regular promethium, unlike the Imperium. Now, is squig oil going to make it better? Yes, I think. Probably. I don't know. But regardless, the burna is usually equipped with a lot of the most interesting things that an orc can be. So fun fact, the burna that uses the burna, which is the name of the thing, burnas are wielded by burna boys, but it's usually just shorted to burnas. But yeah, trust me, doing the research for this has been all over the place. So if it sounds like I'm easily confused by the topic at hand, it's probably because I am. But the burna itself, like the flamethrower, can also be an arc welder if focused enough, which I think is a byproduct of the squig oil, methinks. It's only usable in close range, but it is kind of an interesting idea. Orcs that use burnas as their main weapon are often pyromaniacs, which is, you know, pretty common with flame weapons, you'd assume. But yeah, burnas amass in small groups that are led by a mech who mixes their gas for them. It's pretty simple. These burna squads are usually bought from the GW store, and that is why they have a mech inside the unit. Pretty simple, right? So shout out to an offshoot burna weapon known as the Splash Burna. It is not really a flamer, but it kind of is. Basically, when a mech gets a hold of a Space Marine plasma gun, it can mix it with an Orc burna. This usually leads to a creation that is not a combi weapon, but a flamethrower that doesn't spew burning liquid fuel. Instead, it sprays plasma gas. Kind of like that old plasma incinerator that Dark Angel's Interruptors used to use, but, you know, proper orky. The obvious next step up for the Orc burna is the Orc Scorcher, which is basically just the heavy flamer equivalent. Not much to know other than it's usually mounted on the side of a vehicle or on one of their Death Dread Walker mechs, which kind of implies that it probably burns hot enough that regular orcs can't use it without dying most times. Onto one that is kind of a cliff note, but I do like them in principle, which is the Tau. Yeah, the Tau flamers, right? It's kind of weird that such a civilized race would be using such barbaric weapons as flamers, but, you know, in general, it makes a lot of sense. I guess it does shake down to the same principle with all these factions, and that principle is if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and from the dawn of man, we have always been under the idea that as it stands, fire, again, bad. So, with the Tau trying to take over small pockets of the universe, fire has been an effective tool for a lot of their campaigns. There's literally so little noteworthy about the Tau Flamer that the only thing that I can really come up with is that it exists, but the most interesting aspect of it is that it's wielded by Vespids sometimes. I like the idea of Vespids using this because Vespids are a needle point strike. They're a flying, incredibly fast-moving unit that can get in and get out, so they're usually equipped with pulse rifles or neutron blasters, which is their own thing. But giving them a bunch of flamers is super interesting because they could do pinpoint infrastructure damage to burn down buildings and shouldn't get out in no time flat. I just think it's kind of interesting. Okay, so let's go on to something that might actually be a contender for the best flamer of the whole bunch. The Aeldari are weird. They do have access to flamers, but outside of them just existing, we don't know too much. But the one I want to highlight is the Dragon's Breath Flamer, which is a name that has been already used at least once or maybe twice in 40k. Vulcan kind of had those in his army during the Heresy, but you know what? There's so much overlap of names that it doesn't really matter if we bring up all the points, but regardless, dragon copyright or not, the fire dragons are an aspect warrior of the Eldar that I think is kind of neat. I like all of the aspect warriors. The fire dragons are essentially the pyromaniacs, and also kind of just regular maniacs in general. They literally have so much hate in their heart that nothing less than dust is all that should remain from when they encounter a foe. It's kind of cool, and they are equipped with the right weapons for the job. Fusion guns, fire pikes, melta-bombs, and of course, the Dragon's Breath Flamer. Each is a heavy flamer equivalent for the Eldar, which is a heavy flamer equivalent for the Eldar, but it goes a little bit further than that. Sort of. I'm going to be extrapolating here because there isn't really much to know about it, but it does have a soul stone on the side, which does imply something, either a power source or maybe there's a ghost in it. But the infinite malice of a dead fire dragon powering the damn thing is kind of my headcanon here. Like, they do this shit with swords, like the witch blades that have dead psychers souls in them that rip your ghost out whenever they so much as touch you. I like the idea of the flamer being so powerful that it doesn't just burns you, it burns you in a way that causes actual damage to the reality of the world around you. Just because it's like weird psychic fire that's not actually psychic fire. It's burning you in a way that defies physics because it can get so hot due to that idea of infinite energy being applied. This is going to sound a little weird, but the way that I always imagined it, and I just like talking about this specific thing, is you guys ever watch the X-Files? Yeah, I love that shit. It was part of my editing rotation last year when I was just putting on mindless background content while I was working. But as someone who has at least a little bit of a scientifically inclined background, they sometimes just spout mindless gibberish that makes me laugh. I don't remember the crux of it, but basically it was about invisible aliens that were just showing up because zero budget at the time, and these aliens could burn you with psychic plasma fire or some bullshit. But I remember an entire army platoon that had been affected as this invisible alien had attacked them, and it cut to a room that had a bunch of generic military men clutching their tummies in pain and making groaning noises being tended to doctors. Dana Scully, the scientific skeptic of the show, looks at their partner, Fox Mulder, and says, without a hint of irony, these men have 5th and 6th degree burns. Which, as someone who knows a little bit of biology as well as a little bit of trauma anatomy, that is not a thing. The scale goes to 4. Like, 4th degree burns is like you get chucked into a volcano level level hot. Like, it's so hot that your nerve endings get flash fried and you don't feel anything. Like, if you dip your hand in something that will give you a 4th degree burn, you suddenly just have no hand anymore. It's just a charred stump. So I always wondered what a fucking 5th and 6th degree burn was. Like, did they get burned so bad people who had memories of them started to feel it, like feel a little pain? When I think of that episode, I think of this flamer because it's kind of in the same vein. A flame so supernaturally hot because of weird elf magic that it transcends the known laws of biology and physiology, which makes a lot of sense when you think about the Eldar. Speaking of, let's get into like the last set of flamers and then, you know, cover it up. Tyranids, now, weirdly enough, they don't really have a lot of flame weapons because, well, flame is kind of antithetical to what Tyranids want. If something is hit with fire, it usually gets reduced. The proteins get denatured and it becomes less useful because it's been a burnt husk. So Tyranids burning things doesn't really work. So a lot of what I'm talking about here is cheating a little bit. One of them is the only one that's really stretching it, and the other one is just kind of weird. So the one that's stretching it is the psychoclastic flow of anti-psychic ash that comes from the psychophage. Psychophages are a universal anti-psychic Tyranid bioform that recently emerged from the splinter fleets. See, most Tyranids are by default kind of anti-psychic due to the shadow and the warp, but with some psychers being so powerful that they actually damaged the hive mind recently, and some demonic forces being so powerful that they supersede the shadow and the warp, it was time that the Tyranids made a weapon to deal with it. The Psychophage, a Tyranid wood chipper. I'm not kidding. It drags psychers into its mouth, kicking and screaming, and then mulches them into burning hot ash and spews it out towards individuals. This psychoclastic flow causes less harm to the physical body and more your soul, because I mean, what does a Tyranid need with a soul? So if it can rip your soul out and kill you instantly without damaging your biomass in the slightest, I mean, that's a good thing. It is also apparently especially damaging to psychers who have trouble dealing with it and redirecting it. I like to think of it how a volcano can have a gray eruption of nothing but ash. This is kind of like that. It's similar to like a spewing ash cloud of superheated particles. It's kind of nice. The last flamer I wanted to talk about is probably the reason why I made this video, because I always thought it was cool, and that is the Pyrovore's Flame Spurt. I love this dude, and to my poor editor Alice, I'm so sorry. Yes, there is a disparate amount of art of them as they have gotten an update recently, but prior to this current update, they looked like a gorilla lizard bug with a dick coming out of their back. Now they are a spider with a flame cannon, but at the same time, these two arts are probably both canon because Tyranids are Tyranids. But Pyrovores are cool. They have always been cool. They are essentially sent in by the hive mind to deal with the pesky biomass in a very pre-digestive way. These things are supposed to be external stomachs that go around and melt things with fire, acid, plasma, whatevers. They have an acidic bite and explode into fire and stomach acid whenever they are killed, which, you know, allows everything around them to be, you know, consumed a little bit easier. The fun part is that the flame spurt on top of the bug itself actually has a separate brain and functions 100% independently of the bug. The bug eats the spurts. Because of that, this weird fire spewer can aim independently of whatever the bug is doing. They just supply each other with the necessary nutrients for it, and it is weirdly brilliant. And comically enough, it's actually implied that the brain in the spurt was actually more intelligent than the bug itself, which is kind of funny. But yeah, the gunk it shoots out is basically non-burning hyperacidic napalm that sticks to you and melts you down into consumable sludge. It's basically just pre-digestive juices. So with all that out of the way, let's break it all down. Let's discuss what exactly the best flamer is. I do have my favorites, but to narrow it down a little bit, I think the potential best flamer out of every single thing that we've discussed is probably pretty obvious. So let's give a top 3 really quickly now that we've covered pretty much every category. Number 3, Dragon's Breath Flamer. Number 2, Pyrovore's Flame Spurt. And number 1, you probably saw this coming, but the pink and blue flames of Tzeentch. They are literally so dangerous that there is no response other than like turning into an indiscernible lump of meat on the ground. But that is my opinion. What is yours? I like when these things are a conversation, less so me talking at you. Be sure to let me know in the comments, and I'll see if I missed anything, because I probably missed a few flamers that were out there. If you like this type of content, also make sure to let me know. I'm on a bit of a weird kick recently where I really like researching and talking about weapons, but if you guys don't like it, just let me know and I'll try something else. Thank you all for watching, and special thanks to all my lovely channel members. You are the reason these videos get made, which is how I can pay my editors, keep the content flowing, and keep the videos at the quality they are, and keep growing my resources, I guess. If you want to gain access to special perks, as well as know that you're supporting the channel, then become a channel member today. Thank you once again for watching, and until next time, I hope you don't burn to death in your sleep. Yeah!